Welcome to NewsRap Local. I'm your host, Justin Chapman. Thanks for being here. After providing a few brief updates on this month's local stories, we'll speak with our guest, Darryl Dunn, longtime CEO and general manager of the Rose Bowl Stadium, who has recently announced his retirement. We'll conduct an exit interview of sorts as he wraps up his tenure in June. But before we get started, let's check out these Pasadena media news briefs.
According to the Pasadena Police Department, its new ShotSpotter gunshot detection system alerted field officers to 12 shootings during its first 20 days of operation. In several cases, police were called by members of the public long after the incident occurred, or were never notified at all. The ShotSpotter gunshot detection system is intended to help law enforcement officials identify, locate, and deter gun violence. ShotSpotter says the real-time alerts notify police precisely when and where gunshots occur, resulting in faster, more accurate responses to provide medical attention to gunshot victims, recover evidence, and interview witnesses. When a gunshot occurs, the system's network of sensors triangulate on the sound and pinpoint the location of origin. Trained ShotSpotter acoustic experts are on duty 24/7 to review and qualify all gunfire detection. PPD Lieutenant William Grisafe said, "Preliminarily, we have had good results with the system, providing officers with the exact locations of gunshots. The alerts have decreased officers' response times to these potentially life-threatening situations." Pasadena's minimum wage earners will see an increase in their hourly pay when the city's minimum wage increases to $16.11 per hour in July. Minimum wage is the lowest beginning hourly wage an employer can pay an employee for work. The Pasadena City Council adopted a minimum wage ordinance on March 14, 2016 to increase the rate. The wage increased on July 1st, 2016 to $10.50 an hour and increased by $1.25 on that date every subsequent year until it reached $15 an hour in 2020. The latest increase has left some residents concerned about the impact on small businesses. The increase to $16.11 is based on a provision that increases the wage based on the Consumer Price Index. The CPI measures the average change over time in the prices paid by urban consumers for a market basket of consumer goods and services. Businesses with 25 or fewer employees and qualifying nonprofits have 1 additional year to comply with the sequential wage increases. The city of Pasadena completed its annual homeless count on time Wednesday, February 23rd. The homeless count collects data from people experiencing homelessness in sheltered and unsheltered locations during the annual point-in-time count, usually within the last 10 days of January, as mandated by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. The data collected during the count serves as a snapshot of what homelessness in Pasadena looks like on any given night. It is the primary data source the city uses to determine its strategic planning for homeless services, although it's not the only data source. The count continued until 5 p.m., at which time the supplemental youth count, focusing on young adults between the ages of 18 and 24, was completed. The homeless count was undertaken thanks in part to the many volunteers, including Pasadena Media's Terry Bourne.
At a City Council Candidates Forum next month, co-sponsored by the Pasadena Star News, the Pasadena Community Coalition, and NewsRap Local, I'll help ask the candidates questions about issues that are important to the community. Learn more at PasadenaStarNews.com. But there's a lot going on in the city this month, so let's turn next to our lightning round of news updates. 1. The Pasadena Tenant Justice Coalition turned in 15,352 signatures to the city clerk's office for its campaign to put the Pasadena Fair and Equitable Housing Charter Amendment, a rent control and just cause eviction measure, on the ballot, representing 115% of the signatures they needed. Those signatures, which were pre-validated by the firm PCI, will now need to be validated by the LA County Clerk in order to qualify for the ballot. If approved by voters, the amendment would limit rent increases to once a year and to 75% of the annual increase of the Consumer Price Index. Limit evictions of tenants for just causes only, such as non-payment of rent and breaches of rental agreements, and establish a rental housing board. Organizers say these steps are needed because 57% of Pasadenans are renters. 50% of them pay more than 30% of their income on rent, and 25% of them pay more than 50% of their income on rent, according to the city's own draft housing element. 2. A U.S. District Court judge awarded the city of Pasadena more than $400,000 in attorney's fees for its defense of last year's lawsuit brought by the Tournament of Roses over control of the Rose Bowl and Rose Bowl game trademarks. Last summer, a judge dismissed all but one of the counts filed by the tournament. 3. Earlier this month, the city opened recruitment for the permanent city manager position, currently filled by interim city manager Cynthia Kurtz. Salary range is listed as $290,000 to $330,000. The city hired Wendy Brown of WBCP Inc., an Oregon-based recruiting firm, to conduct the search. The application period runs through April 28th, and then in-person candidate interviews are scheduled for June 3rd and 4th. The final applicants will then be presented to the full city council. The city is accepting public input on the new city manager through an online survey and held a town hall in late March. 4. Pasadena Mayor Victor Gordo responded to California State Attorney General Rob Bonta's March letter in which he claimed the city of Pasadena is in violation of a recent state housing law, SB 9, when it passed an urgency ordinance designed to retain some local control over development standards. The mayor wrote, quote, "The city of Pasadena is not in violation of SB 9 as wrongfully asserted by the Attorney General. Bonta had set last Friday as the deadline by which the city must repeal or amend the ordinance. But that deadline came and went with no action on the city's part. And in fact, the city's planning commission unanimously approved amending the zoning code to prohibit the application of SB 9 on properties in landmark districts. Public information officer for the city, Lisa Derderian, told Pasadena Now that, quote, "There is the potential litigation regarding the AG's allegations." 5. The Human Relations Commission unanimously approved new plaque language to replace existing plaques installed at Mills Place in Old Pasadena to describe the 1885 white racist riot that burned down a Chinese-owned laundry, destroyed part of Pasadena's Chinatown, and forced up to 100 Chinese residents to flee the city by threat of lynching. Pasadena Heritage has asked the city to formally apologize for the incident. The story came to light in 2015 when local historian Matt Horman wrote an article about it in the Pasadena Weekly. 6. LA County District Attorney George Gascon announced that no charges will be brought against Pasadena police officer Edwin DuMcGuindon for shooting and killing Anthony McLean in August 2020 because there is insufficient evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the officer did not act in lawful self-defense. DuMcGuindon shot McLean in the back as he ran away from a traffic stop because he claimed McLean reached for a gun as he ran. But many in the community said they do not see a gun in the body cam video released by the police department. So they are, of course, outraged at the decision. 7. Pasadena City College's Academic Senate Board passed a vote of no confidence in PCC Superintendent and President Dr. Erica Androhonis. The vote was, quote, intended to bring attention to and public accountability for the pattern of failed leadership at PCC during the global coronavirus pandemic. Part of that discontent relates to PCC leadership mandating that teachers and students return to in-person instruction in January, even though cases of the Omicron variant COVID-19 were spiking. One faculty member wrote that, quote, forcing people to return to campus is ableist and far from inclusive. For students and faculty who are immunocompromised or have vulnerable family members, coming to campus is literally a matter of life and death. 8. The City Council voted to end the city's commercial and residential eviction moratorium, which has been in place since March 2020 due to COVID. Mayor Gordo recused himself because he owns rental property, though he's not the only one on the council who does. The commercial moratorium will end in May, and the residential moratorium will end on June 30th, after which tenants will have 6 months to repay any back rent owed. 9. The city is currently looking to raise up to $120 million or more for the seismic retrofit and renovation of the Pasadena Central Library, which of course closed last May after it was discovered that the building, which opened in 1927, would be unsafe in an earthquake. Acting Library Director Tim McDonald said the city has been applying for grants to fund the retrofit. And 10, public comment at city council meetings for matters not on the agenda have been moved to the end of council meetings rather than the beginning. Mayor Gordo made the announcement, quote, in order to allow the council to complete its business in a timely manner. Council member John Kennedy opposed the move, saying it might discourage citizens from speaking out about matters not on the agenda because council meetings typically go very late, usually past 10 p.m. and sometimes past midnight. He said, Quote, "I don't see how that is good government." Let's patch in our guest, Darryl Dunn. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Justin. Appreciate you having me tonight.
Darryl has served as the CEO and general manager of the Rose Bowl Stadium since 1999, and he recently announced his retirement effective June 30th. He is responsible for managing all aspects of the facility, including contract negotiations with prospective events, ongoing relationships with existing tenants, and all financial, marketing, and operational needs for the stadium. He's extensively involved in long-range planning for the facility and spearheaded the planning and execution of a $183 million renovation for the historic facility beginning in 2011. He negotiated 30-year agreements with tenants UCLA and the Tournament of Roses, and long-term agreements with sports marketing companies IMG and Legends. Prior to the Rose Bowl, Darryl worked for the LA Lakers, LA Raiders, LA Clippers, and the 1994 World Cup Organizing Committee. So, Darryl, you've been there a long time. Why did you feel that now was the right time to step down, and what's next for you?
Well, I will say it was one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make, because I really, really care deeply about the Rose Bowl and about Pasadena. But there's a time, when we had to communicate to our staff, there's a few things that are certainty, and one of them being is leaving a job. And so as great as a run it has been, an amazing experience, I thought, it's time to, do some other things and maybe focus more on some opportunities, personal ones with my family, and move on. And in terms on the timing, one thing that I've learned that I think the most important staff position, certainly in the city of Pasadena, really is a city manager. And they're doing a search right now for a new city manager, and there's challenges ahead and some real difficult decisions that need to be made, and it's going to take a little bit of time. So I thought the right time would be to allow my successor to really work, hopefully hand in hand with the new city manager, and they really need to form a bond and a strong working relationship. So if I'm going to leave in the near future, maybe the time for me is leave now, so my successor and the new city manager should sort of come in as a tandem somewhat, and let them go in and do what they got to do, which will be to try to preserve and enhance and make the future of the Rose Bowl as bright as its history has been.
Right. And so this year, of course, is the Rose Bowl centennial. So how will that be recognized throughout the year?
Well, there's a lot of events coming up. We're having 8 music festival dates. UCLA is having 8 home games, the most ever had. And we really started with the 2022 Rose Bowl game, which was an amazing game with Utah and Ohio State. And there was our logo, the centennial, was on the field. And there was a special video that Tournament of Roses did to really pay tribute to the stadium. We're also having a Party of the Century on July 30th, which will be a gala celebrating the Rose Bowl history. We're having a great community event coming up on Sunday, May 1st for Cinco de Mayo, also to celebrate, which is a free event for the public. And it's going to keep on going. We're going to do more and more things. And we think the centennial is going to be so popular that it'll probably bleed into 2023 too a little bit. So it's something that we're very, very proud of. There's so few stadiums in the country that have reached 100 years old. And certainly the iconic nature of the Rose Bowl is something that we are so proud of, and we want to share that with everybody.
All right. And you mentioned some difficult decisions ahead. So where do the renovations stand, and what does the financial picture look like right now? I think last spring a consultant said the Rose Bowl operating company will need to raise $26 million over the next 5 years to cover its growing debt service obligations. And there's, correct me if these numbers are wrong, but $197 million in outstanding debt. Following the economic impacts of the pandemic, can Pasadena afford the Rose Bowl?
Well, the last year actually has been one of the best years we've ever had. That $26 million, issue relating to our operating budget, a lot of that has been, this past year, I think we did a $20 million turnaround during the past 12 months, which is amazing. We're very, very proud of. But there continues to be the challenges. We've continued to run at a structural deficit, and there will be difficult decisions to be made. the Pasadena it's so unique. And this is a small city, and having a stadium the size of the Rose Bowl, and then the market in LA is the most competitive stadium market in the United States, and the only one that I think in the world that could compare would likely be London. You have, besides ourselves, you have the Coliseum, which is another National Historic Landmark, and of course you have SoFi Stadium, which is $5.5 billion, which is right now considered to be, really probably the most state-of-the-art stadium in the world. So it's tough sledding. There's no question. And I think, to the point I made previously, I think the city manager and my successor, and then, really the board of directors of the Rose Bowl operating company, and of course the stadium's owner, the city of Pasadena, are going to collaborate and include the community in some hard decisions. Pasadena, there's no choice. They own the Rose Bowl, and this Rose Bowl is not going anywhere. Mm-hmm. So in terms of can you afford it? Well, it's here. It's part of the fabric of this community and of this great city. So we're just going to go in and figure out what is necessary in order to keep the stadium thriving and continue to be successful. But there will not be easy decisions, because probably the thing that people could do the most, and where we can get the most help is, we have a great foundation, the Rose Bowl Legacy Foundation. We raised $50 million since its inception in 2010. That's critical to our future. But we also, when the events occur, we need more people to come. Unfortunately, college football has declined in attendance across the country, and UCLA has not been immune to that. So that's important. There are anchor tenants. We need them to be as successful as possible, both UCLA and the Rose Bowl game. And as their success, we'll be successful as well.
And you mentioned the other stadiums. Of course, Southern California is getting a little crowded with the large-scale event venues. What can the Rose Bowl do to stay competitive? I imagine the international soccer and sporting events are important. It's the only venue in the world that's ever hosted the gold medal match of the Olympics in 1984 and final matches of the men's and women's World Cups in 94, 99. And you've also carried out a number of music and food festivals in the Arroyo around the stadium. So how integral are those partnerships with international soccer, large music festivals to the stadium's viability going forward?
They're all critical. You touched on many of the keys. Certainly our relationship with AEG has been one of the things we're very, very proud of. Along those lines with AEG, we knew the NFL was coming. We knew the NFL coming before there was a SoFi Stadium, and we've been planning for that. When we did the renovation, part of that was doing long-term contracts with UCLA and the Term of Roses, which don't expire for 20 plus years from now. And we wanted to have our anchors in place. When SoFi Stadium has come in, they're taking a lot of the marquee concerts to SoFi. People want to play the new building. They think they're going to come around and they'll come back. Some of them will. But we did. We somewhat expanded our focus. We went to the music festivals. We're taking advantage of really a campus, of using their golf course for other things besides golf. So we are doing a lot. We're turning over all the rocks and trying to be entrepreneurial and looking at things. But we all, as I said before, the anchor tenants, we need them to be successful. So there's a lot to going into it. At the same time, we're publicly owned. There's no other stadiums that, every other stadium that I'm aware of has some more public financial support. And, once again, Pasadena is a small city. So how does that whole thing play out? Can we go in? Could there be opportunities to get some financial support by doing, something that the voters approve? Maybe, that's something I think, that needs to be looked at going forward. The Rose Bowl needs are very significant. I believe the biggest need for the Rose Bowl long-term is capital. We're 100 years old. It's like a 100-year-old house, but a big house. Things happen, and I think Pasadena's done an amazing job for the first 100 years of the Rose Bowl of finding ways to reinvest into the stadium, to keep it, to focus on the fan experience, recognizing you need to generate revenue at the same time and deal with such, obviously public safety and other critical matters. So that's what needs to happen. It needs to be continued focus. We need to continue to look for solutions.
And how should the stadium and the city balance the financial need, the very real financial need, with the surrounding community's desire for a quiet, peaceful neighborhood with no traffic? I mean, there's a clear need for so-called displacement events. So how do you strike that balance?
It's a hard balance because it's really not, when we have events, it's not quiet and there is traffic. So that occurs now. We do a lot of different kind of events. I mean, the Arroyo as a whole, we have thousands of people every day down here, just walking around the Rose Bowl and going in the aquatic center and kids space and the golf course. So there's a lot of activity in the Central Arroyo. How do we fit in with it? Certainly communication with our neighbors and with stakeholders is very, very important in going in, but we do need activity. It's pretty simple. Ultimately, Dave, more activity typically will mean more revenue. So how can we do that? Are there other ways that should be looked at as well? Are there other things that can be, sort of spread out throughout the city, throughout the region? Those are opportunities that need to be looked at. But certainly with our neighbors, one of the things I'm very proud of is the relationship we've had with neighborhoods in the community, because I think the neighbors pretty much across the board, they want to see the Rose Bowl be successful. They're also proud of the Rose Bowl. And we also recognize they just don't want their lives impacted negatively. So we do the best we can to try to balance that. And if there's a mistake or if there's some problems, we'll do everything we can to address it, to fix it. So the relationship with the neighborhood is a top priority, always has been, and I think it always will be.
Mm-hmm. And so the RBOC is now conducting a search for your successor. What skills does the next general manager of the stadium need to have? Are they going to face challenges that didn't exist during your tenure, or is it pretty much going to be the same challenges that you had?
There's going to be new things. There always are. That's just the nature of the situation. Certainly, the financial challenges, they exist. The long-term future, I think I'm very proud also of the fact that we have always looked at the long-term. What's in the best long-term interest to try to enable the stadium to be on solid footing for the future. So I think that mindset's going to be important. The community is very important. Certainly the relationships you have with your key stakeholders, with UCLA and the Tournament of Roses and AAG and the flea market. They're all customers. So working to try to satisfy their needs and what are important for their fan bases as well and their customers. They're all important. Dealing with the city as the owner. Again, there's not a lot of cities that ultimately operate stadiums. Typically they're, contracted out to private management companies. We're a management company, but we're public, and ultimately, we are an extension of the city, of the public entity. And so those challenges that exist today, and none of those are going away. Those will continue going forward, but I'm sure there's going to be some new ones too. The future with a Rose Bowl legacy and how we can continue to really bolster that because that is a primary way we generate revenue and income for capital improvements. And as I said, capital improvements are so important for the future, as a prioritization and just going forward. They're all, my job, no 2 days have ever been the same. There's different kind of opportunities and challenges and excitement and gratification. I get them all. Sometimes I get all of them the same day.
And so when you look back on your career at the Rose Bowl, what are you proudest of?
I'm proud of a lot, and it's hard to pinpoint. Certainly, I think the relationship with the community is something I'm very proud of. The growth, the fact that we were able to spend $180 million to reinvest into the stadium. I think the growth of music, I'm really, really proud of. The fact that we did long-term arrangements, commitments with our two anchor tenants, UCLA and the Tournament of Roses. We've done so much. We have an amazing, amazing staff, an amazing team, the board of directors and support and of the city. I've been so lucky to be in this position and this to be the pinnacle of my career.
Well, Darryl, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us about your work at the Rose Bowl, and I hope you enjoy your retirement.
Thanks, Justin. I appreciate it. I appreciate all your support. Thanks for having me today.
Thanks. Take care. Before we go, here is this month in Pasadena history. It was this month in 1947 when Pasadena's own Jackie Robinson broke the baseball color line when he started at first base for the Brooklyn Dodgers, the team on which he played his entire major league career. The LA Dodgers and PUSD schools celebrated the 75th anniversary last Friday with members of the Robinson family, including Jackie's widow, Rachel, and his son, David. All players throughout Major League Baseball wore Robinson's number 42, and for the first time, all teams used Dodger blue for their 42 jersey numbers, regardless of their primary team colors. Robinson helped lead the Dodgers to 6 National League titles and, in 1955, their only World Series championship in Brooklyn. He was born in Cairo, Georgia in 1919, and he moved to Pasadena the following year, where he later attended Pasadena Junior College in 1938 and 1939. Thank you all so much for joining me for this episode of NewsRap Local. Tune in every third Friday of the month at 5 p.m. Learn more at pasadenamedia.org and justindouglaschapman.com. Sign up for my monthly email newsletter to get updates on my work by visiting justinchapman.substack.com. See you next month.